Hi everyone, this is Alan Lepofsky from Constellation Research, and I'm here doing my wrap-up of Day 2 of the Google Next conference, where today they focused on a lot of the news in the GSuite product family. Now, they made a lot of announcements in two areas, in Drive and in Hangouts. Let me see if I can recap these all for you. There was 5 announcements around Drive. There was the announcement of the general availability of team drives, quick access for drives, Vault for Drive, which is for security. They did the acquisition of a Canadian company called AppBridge, which helps move on-premises content into Drive. And then finally, the early availability program for something called Drive Filestream, which is going to allow you to access files that are up in the cloud as if they were on your hard drive. Now, in the meeting space, or the collaboration space, they did 3 announcements for Hangouts. First, they introduced a new product called Hangouts Meet, which is their web conferencing tool. That is going to be generally available. They introduced the beta program for Hangouts Chat, which is a group messaging-like client that allows you to have persistent rooms where you can meet with your team and have conversations. And they introduced something called Chambord. Now, Chambord is both a physical, large 55-inch screen where you can do whiteboarding, as well as applications where you can do whiteboarding. And finally, they introduced the developer preview for Gmail add-ons. So let's dive into a little more detail and talk about a few of these. So first up is team drives. Now, this is exactly what it sounds like. It's files and folders that are not just for your own personal use, but shared with your colleagues or even externally with your customers. Team drives is not just the evolution of the existing Google Drive product, but instead it's been rebuilt from the ground up for enterprise needs, things like security, scalability, usability, integration with other products, etc. When you drag and drop files or move files or copy files into these folders, Google takes care of things like permissioning, making sure that all the people have access to see what they're supposed to see. You can even do things like make sure new employees, when they're onboarded, are given access to specific shared folders so that they can get up to speed right away with content. So Google Team Drives, that's something that their customers, Google customers, have been waiting for quite a while. Okay, so if the first part is team drives, that's what gives you access to all of this content. The second part of the announcements would be around, well, how do you, now that you have access to all of it, what do you do with all of that information? Not everybody wants gigabytes and terabytes of information stored down on their local drive. So Google has announced the early access program to something called Drive Filestream. What this does is it allows your computer to sort of virtually look like you have access to all of the information that's in the cloud, but through your own file system. So you see all the files and all the folders, but they're not physically on your hard drive. When you click on one, it then streams that information to your computer, opens it up, you make your changes, you hit save, they go back, they've never been on your hard drive. So it gives you access to all of that information you have in Google Drive and in your team drives, but without having to have it locally. Now, this is very similar to what some of their competitors are working on. Box and Dropbox and Ignite all have similar sort of streaming offerings, either out and ready today or in early adopter program. Each has its strengths and its weaknesses. They all sort of come at it in different ways. Some of the tools are more invasive at sort of a security file system level. Some of those tools use older technologies like WebDAV. So I'm not going to get into too much detail here, but it's good to see Google Drive sort of playing catch up in this space, making sure that they also will have this ability to have it sort of seamlessly appear, that the access to all the files you have, without taking up a lot of disk space. I should also point out that you can also right-click on these folders and decide which files to have for offline for those cases where you don't have connectivity, airplanes and in transit, etc. So team drives is about storing and sharing content. File streaming is about getting access to it without taking up your entire hard drive. The third part is the part that interests me the most, and one of the things I was the most excited about at all of Google Next, and it's this subtle little feature called Quick Access. Now, what Quick Access does is says, you have access to all of these files and all of this information, and they're all stored up in the cloud, and you can stream them down to your machine, but which file should you be looking at? what knowledge, what information should you be seeing at the right time and the right place? So if we have access to thousands of files, which 2 or 3 are the ones I should be seeing right now? And how can I deliver those to you, and how can they be surfaced, in the right context? And so Google is using the power of their machine learning, their artificial intelligence, to data mine things like your email, your calendar, your connections. What things have your colleagues been doing? What have they been liking or commenting on or sharing? And brings all of that information together and provides you, a few recommended files to take a look at. Now, this isn't something simple like recently opened. These are the specific files that G Suite feels you should be looking at this time and in this moment. And I think this really is a very significant thing that they're doing, and doing it in a nice, subtle way. Now, showing you the files that you should be looking at is sort of just the start of this artificial intelligence journey for Google and this part of G Suite, this content in context. Think about being able to find, just specific pieces inside some of this content. So maybe not an entire document or an entire spreadsheet or an entire presentation, but a specific slide or a specific value in a specific cell or a specific author or a specific commenter. So this is really, I think, the start of a very, very interesting and very powerful journey for G Suite and for Google. And again, very subtle, and it didn't get a lot of attention, but to me, this was one of the most important parts of Google Next. From a competitive standpoint, this would be most similar to, if you're familiar with Microsoft, of what they're doing around their Delve product. So Delve is also, similar in this essence of using the graph of all of the things that you're doing, your email, your calendars and contacts and documents, and trying to surface the relevant content at the right time. So I'm really interested in watching these two vendors in this space and seeing how these features manifest themselves and how they help users find the right people and the right content in the right context. The next Drive announcement was the introduction of Vault for Drive. This revolves around the security and compliance and governance side of things. It allows legal departments or IT departments to do things like legal holds, document retention, search, and e-discovery. As you can see here, you can set up search criteria and look for specific terms. Search through content, find the things that you need, etc. This is building upon some announcements that Google made just a few months ago, back in January, around data loss prevention, where you can automatically scan content for specific patterns, things like medical records and shipping records and credit cards and social security numbers, etc. So Google Vault for Drive is an add-on to their DLP capabilities, and this should really help with those governance and compliance and audit requirements. Last but not least, Google announced the acquisition of AppBridge. AppBridge is a Canadian company, yay, go Canada, that helps companies migrate data from their on-premises solutions into G Suite. So this should be very helpful for those customers that are looking to get lots of data up into the cloud and start using G Suite. Okay, so lots of things on the Drive side. Let's shift gears now and start to talk about the collaboration announcements. First up is Hangouts Meet. Now, Hangouts Meet is not just the evolution of the existing consumer Hangouts product. This is a rewritten code base that's faster, more secure, and integrated with the G Suite product line. On the consumer side, they have things like Hangouts and Duo and Allo, and businesses have been wondering, what is going to be the solution for G Suite? And it was great to see at Google Next them very clearly establish that web conferencing or video conferencing is going to come in the form of Hangouts Meet. Now, the current code base, I think, supports up to 30 concurrent participants. They're looking at boosting that up to 50, I believe, for summertime, they said in the breakout sessions. And as well, a great future enhancement coming very soon is saving these recordings as video files to Drive, so that they can then be shared out. So video conferencing, integrated with calendaring and scheduling, etc., all gonna happen in the form of Hangouts Meet. Competitive standpoint, video conferencing or unified communication is certainly one of the hottest spaces in the social business or collaboration market right now. You have, Cisco with, their leading WebEx product, but they're also, Cisco Spark line of products where those two things are sort of merging together and, doing a lot of great stuff in that space. You have What was Citrix GoToMeetings, GoToMeeting has now been spun off from Citrix and has been purchased by LogMeIn. And LogMeIn also has their Join Me web conferencing. So GoToMeeting plus Join Me. You have startups like Zoom, Uber Conference, High Five, Fuse, Glance, Blue Jeans, lots of players in this space. Obviously, Microsoft has their Skype and Skype for Business product family in this space. So lots of things going on here, and it's good to see sort of Google putting their stake in the sand, and we'll see where they go. I think integration with the GSuite products certainly has to be one of their differentiators and one of their strengths. The next sort of big bombshell announcement at Google Next was the introduction of Hangouts Chat. Now, I say bombshell kind of, sarcastically, because everybody was sort of waiting around to see what Google was going to be doing in this group messaging, group application space. Obviously, it's hard to kind of introduce this product without using an analogy to something like Slack. But, Slack's not the only player in this space. You have Microsoft Teams, you have HipChat and Highbox, Cisco creating Spark. Lots of different offerings in this space. IBM is introducing Watson workspaces. This has sort of become the new metaphor for team communication, is these group messaging applications. Navigation on the left-hand side for one-on-one conversations, for team conversations. In Hangouts Chat, persistent places are called rooms. So instead of channels, they're calling theirs rooms. Some places call them spaces or workspaces. Google is going with rooms. And so inside these rooms, you have members, you have conversations, you ask questions, you can share files, you can see some great integration with the rest of the Google portfolio, obviously. So Google Docs can easily be shared and permissions are handled. So if you upload a file to a Hangout Chat room, the permissions for that file are automatically taken care of for those members. You can also see integration with Hangouts Meet, the product we were just talking about, so you can launch into a video conversation with people very easily. They've also done a great job with third-party integration, so you can have outside systems push information into the stream. So in this example, we're looking at a service ticket from Zendesk. Now, the opposite is also true. You can query third-party systems. So in this case, we're asking, at ProsperWorks, what are my sales numbers last month? And the bot for that, the chat bot for ProsperWorks, returns that information directly into that stream. So you can have push as well as having pull. They're launching with several partners. You can see here Smartsheet and Box and Freshdesk and others. So lots of bots can be available. This is obviously an area they have to grow in. Products like Slack and Cisco Spark have huge funds that they're giving to developers to build applications and integration. Slack introduced, I think it was an $80 million developer fund, and Cisco followed suit with a $150 million developer fund. So, vendors are certainly vying for developer and third-party attention in this space. And I think, those that build out the biggest catalogs, and not just the biggest, but you don't want quantity, you want quality of integrations is really important. So this, great looking product, certainly very impressive for a version 1 being out there. Hangouts Chat, highly functional, does lots of things. Certainly begs questions about, how does this compare and contrast and compete with Google Plus, which is available for GSuite customers as well. So I look forward to kind of seeing the roadmap for those two and where we're going. But Hangout Chat's certainly a timely offering from Google and an important part of the Google Suite. The final section of the collaboration announcement revolves around what they call Chambord. Now, at first glance, Chambord is a large, 55-inch flat screen. It can be hung on the wall in a conference room or wheeled around from room to room. But it's not just the physical hardware. There's also the application side of Chambord, so people can join from tablets and phones and PCs, etc. And where Hangouts Meet is the video conferencing aspect, Chambord is the whiteboarding aspect. This is really where people work creatively to share information, to brainstorm, to draw on ideas. And Chambord has, really good integration across the Google portfolio, so you can easily add slides or spreadsheets or documents from Drive. You can join a Hangout Meet, or the Jamboard can become part of a Hangout Meet, so it can become a tool. That's the whiteboarding tool sort of inside a meeting, and people can participate in those. So, from a competitive standpoint, this sort of makes people think about things like Cisco SparkBoard, Microsoft Surface Hub. The way I sort of see this spectrum, the Cisco SparkBoard, excellent, extremely well done video and web conferencing capabilities, really their strong suit there, sort of that audio and video. The whiteboarding capabilities are more rudimentary than what I'm seeing so far from Jamboard. For example, Jamboard can automatically recognize handwriting and shapes and convert them. So as you're writing, it can convert your personal handwriting into a nice formatted font. Same with shapes. So if you're drawing out flowcharts and things, it can fix all of those for you automatically. On the other end of the spectrum is the Microsoft Surface Hub, which extremely complex, but very powerful. You can do all sorts of things like running CAD/CAM applications or engineering or mechanical things in 3D on those boards. That's not what a Jamboard is for. Jamboard's really kind of focused on the whiteboard. So I see it sort of positioned in between SparkBoards and Surface Hubs in some ways, obviously overlapping in others, but we can get into a more detailed and in-depth analysis a little later on. For now, really interesting, really creative, great use of them. I spent some time with one, both on the board itself as well as via the application. The drag and drop is really easy. It was simple to do a Google search for images, drag them, put them on the screen, annotate them, play around, etc. So Google Jamboard, you can see here some of the hardware specs. I'll pause and let you take a look at them. And here's some of the pricing and availability information. So again, sort of the strength of what they're going to be doing in Jamboard, finding sort of the balance between simplicity and power, and then obviously the integration with the rest of GSuite. And the final bit of news from Google Next around GSuite was related to Gmail. And it's this developer preview of what they're calling Gmail add-ons. Now, you've always been able to extend Gmail with, sidebar widgets and things, usually using Google Chrome browser plugin extensions. This is a brand new way, more modern way of doing it, where what you add on to Gmail will be cross-platform. It'll be available in the browser, it'll be available on mobile, etc. So you'll sort of write your app once now, and it will be able to extend the functionality of Gmail no matter where you use it. So that's a pretty significant change. You'll be building these using Google Apps Script. The add-ons will be available in the Google Marketplace. And some examples, that was shown at the show were integration with Salesforce. You're looking at an email, and you can look up customer records based on the email addresses, etc. And here's an example of integration with invoicing via QuickBooks, where you're on an email and you can immediately send an invoice to that customer, etc. Now, that's one of the things to point out about these add-ons is they're not just always there. They sort of appear in the context that they're meant for. So easier to write, cross-platform, and more context aware. So that's the developer preview of Gmail add-ons. Okay, so what's my final wrap up? What are my thoughts about this week? Well, first of all, I think one of the main things you should take away is that Google is starting to take the enterprise very seriously. Not starting, but is actually on their journey. That means for the last few years, they've been doing things like taking their consumer tools and figuring out how to build enterprise versions of them. Gmail and Inbox and Drive, etc. Now they're actually focusing on building core applications for the enterprise right from the start. So things like Chambord, things like Hangouts Meet and Hangouts Chat, things like App Maker. These are born specifically for the enterprise market. Now, while they did announce lots of new features for all of these products, overall I'm a little disappointed that they didn't really announce anything that's game-changing. They're adding things to their existing product line. They're working on Hangouts. They're working on Mail. But I know that Google is doing a lot of amazing things around things like machine learning and artificial intelligence that they didn't really kind of bring out at this show. Now, they talked about them for Google Cloud Platform, but they didn't talk about them so much for G Suite. Now, there was information in some of the breakouts that wasn't in the keynotes. So there is a lot more information out there, but perhaps that just means, maybe G Suite should have a breakout of its own, because there is so much news and so many things going on in the collaboration space. So for existing Google customers, I think they're going to be very happy. I think they're going to love these versions a lot more. Did I see enough to move from a competitive platform over to G Suite, specifically because of what they announced today? Not really. And so I'm expecting a lot more innovation from Google now that they have really solidified the foundation of what they're doing. Drives and Hangouts are sort of at the place they want them to be for enterprise. So now they can really start, maybe next year, have announcements around redefining the way people work, really changing that paradigm of email, calendar, contacts, and tasks, changing that metaphor of things like docs and sheets and presentations. Where are the new things? Create some really incredible new innovations. That's what I expect from Google, and I think they've built a great foundation to get there. So, good announcements. Still, the analyst in me is leaving me wanting more, and the futurist in me is wanting more, but I highly encourage Google customers to check out all the new features that are coming, get the general availability products up and running, join those early adopter and developer previews, and I think your employees and your customers that you're interacting with via Google are going to be really happy. Okay, Alan Lepofsky from Constellation Research coming to you from Google Next. Thank you. Bye.